Okay, we're going to talk about hoarding disorder today, but it's very misunderstood, and unfortunately, it's very prevalent around the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is hoarding, the causes, how to be supportive and how not to be supportive, the health and safety risks, and some assessment tools to help us find out, do I have hoarding disorder? Or does she have hoarding disorder? That sort of thing. Okay. So we think of stereotypes, people with hoarding disorder. Well, they're just lazy. Family, friends are thinking, why don't they just get rid of that stuff? They're just too lazy. They just need to get busy, right? Or they're crazy. People are crazy if they have that much stuff. They must be just plain nuts. Refusing to clean. Okay. They just, it's not a problem. People, they say that, they don't think there's anything wrong with the living room that looks like that. It's my house. I get to, if I want it to look like that, it's going to look like that. Too sentimental. Many of us have a lot of trouble getting rid of things that we don't want, we don't need, but it was grandma's. It was my mom's. Somebody gave it to, a friend gave it to me, and throwing it away would be like throwing away my friend. I mean, I'm not going to do that. And choice. This is how I'm going to live. It's by choice. So what is hoarding exactly? Hoarding is a mental issue that has public safety implications. Public safety, it's just all in their house. Well, consider that probably the house has odors that may actually leave the house and affect the people living around them. Hoarding situations are huge fire hazards. That home may be just ripe for a fire. And if there's other homes nearby, they will be affected. Oftentimes, there are infestations, whether it's some kind of insects or rodents or whatever. Those are going to start in that house, but then they're going to start to creep out to houses around them. So there are public safety implications as well. Just in 2013, hoarding was deemed a diagnosis recognized in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. We fondly call that the DSM-5. 5 just means it's that edition. Because it is in that manual, it is now considered the same level as ADHD, OCD, all kinds of mental illnesses and diseases. So the good news is that now that it's recognized and it's in the DSM, it becomes available for insurance purposes, for county and state funding to help people with hoarding disorder. Effective treatment addresses both public safety and individual mental health concerns. Okay, so hoarding involves excessive acquisition of stuff. Excessive, not just, oh, my closet is really messy. No, we're talking excessive acquisition of stuff and ongoing acquisition. Emotional attachment to possessions and anxiety around letting go of items. So if an item is removed from the home or lost or stolen or whatever, the person with hoarding disorder becomes extremely anxious, way beyond the norm of people, and just, lots and lots of mental issues there. And it's different than collecting. And I just talked about that a little bit differently, but again, collections are not hoarding necessarily, unless they completely get out of control. But it's Collections are a whole different thing. Okay. Hoarding is a separate disorder from all of these other OCD, behavioral anxiety. These are all, valid, but hoarding is set aside. It's itself a unit. It's different than other issues. It can be associated with OCD, depression, anxiety, attention deficit disorder, and so forth. In fact, it's found that people with hoarding disorder often also have, it's called comorbidity or coexisting problems, and up to 7, average of 7 other issues besides hoarding is involved. Living spaces cannot be used for the intended purposes. Now, I love this garage picture because you even have to kind of stare closely and see that there is the front end of a car in there somewhere. So obviously, this is the garage that cannot be used as a garage because it's full of stuff. And we already kind of covered that a little bit. Significant emotional distress and or physical impairment. And that's kind of the double whammy when they have when people have hoarding disorder and physical issues. It makes it very, very difficult. Sometimes the hoarding is could be considered a result of being physically impaired. Emotional distress to those close to the person who is hoarding. There are organizations available nationwide and probably worldwide for families of people with hoarding disorder, children of families with hoarding disorder. So it involves everyone around them. It's not just one person's issue. Hoarding results in financial strain, okay, and in many different aspects. For example, people accumulate items that they pay for, and oftentimes they cannot afford the things that they accumulate. Pretty soon it can be evident that credit cards are maxed out. There can be bankruptcy involved. Multiple health and safety issues, again, contribute to the fact that the people, even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to clean up anything in the home because of all the issues that they have. The home may be deemed unfit for habitation, and this is a huge, huge issue and could result in eviction or other action from health departments and landlords. There are many people that are homeless because they have been evicted because of hoarding issues. Mike just talked about the animal hoarding, which I don't know if it's on a slow news day or whatever, but once in a while, not every issue or not every animal hoarding issue is publicized. It happens often that we don't know about, but every once in a while in our area, we have newspaper articles or television news articles popping up about the number of animals that had to be removed from a home because it was not even fit for the animals to live in, let alone the person that was hoarding. Landlords, and it's very expensive because for a landlord to clean out an apartment where, unbeknownst to them, is a huge hoarding situation. So the people just walk away and the landlord has to go in, and it's very expensive to have companies come in and clean out that apartment. So is it just Americans? No, not at all. So how many people do hoard? Well, the study that I have is almost 10 years old now. So I think it would be safe to say that we could bump these numbers up a little bit, but with research, Italy, 6% of the population. Germany, 4.6 to 5.8. Sweden, 2%. Now, we met Margareta Magnusson, wonderful Swedish person. She jokes about it in that people in Sweden are socially required to not leave a bunch of stuff to their kids. She jokes that if you leave a bunch of things for your kids to take care of when you die, people will talk about you. You are considered rude. I mean, that is just not done. The UK, 1.5 to 2.3. United States was 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, 5%. But everyone I talk to is considering that to be low, really low. There's a good chance that it's higher than that now. I did find one study just the other day that in 2020, China was 8% of the people in China had hoarding disorder. I never would have thought, but it's interesting if you just Google, how many people with hoarding disorder live in China or whatever you want to do. It's a whole different reasoning. It's the culture of China. So if you're interested in that, I recommend that you check that out on the web. Okay. Hoarding in older adults. Now it's sort of like a, well, duh, older adults tend to have more stuff because they've had more years to accumulate things. Plus, as you get older, maybe your grandparents pass away and you get a bunch of stuff from them. Your parents pass away and you get a bunch of stuff from them. So by the time you get to the point where you're thinking about downsizing, you probably have items from at least one or two back families that you've gotten their stuff. So my clients say, well, I got this and I was the closest child to mom's house. So I got all her stuff. So in other words, the family decided that that's just where all mom's stuff was going to go. And it's a concern because they didn't go and get that stuff. It was sort of dumped on them. Average age of hoarding disorder is 50, with many over 65, though tendencies can start in childhood. Energy level, stamina, and physical strength make it difficult to complete sorting and cleaning tasks. Okay, and we have just talked about that. People over 65 oftentimes have ambulatory issues. They can't get around very well, let alone pick up boxes and carry them out of the house. Dementia, strokes, and other brain issues make it difficult to concentrate, focus, and remember things. So these people are oftentimes just trying to make it through the day and stay in their homes if they can. So the idea of actually cleaning out the house and getting rid of things they don't want or use is not an option. Okay. Causes of hoarding. Hoarding behavior has multiple internal and external causes. And they can be grouped into biological, psychological, and social. So there's not just one issue that causes hoarding. Biological factors, it is now, and I have an entire presentation on clutter and the brain. And there's some fascinating research out there. There is some evidence that hoarding behavior can be passed down genetically from parent to child. Like any other disease, people can have a predisposition for hoarding disorder physically. Biological factors. People may learn hoarding behavior from family members. This is one of the saddest pictures I've ever seen, because as I was rifling through pictures to use for PowerPoints, I came across this and I had to really look. And I saw this little boy sitting on the couch with all this stuff around. And it's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking. Some may have the opposite reaction and want nothing to do with hoarding. So either, I grew up with a hoarding situation and I thought it was normal. I thought that's how everybody lived. Or I know that growing up in that situation was not normal, and I will do everything I can to not ever, ever have my own home in that condition. Biological factors. Half of the hoarding population started the tendency before 18. Half of people with hoarding disorder started before age 18, or even younger in some studies. Now, that's a tough one to call, I think, because kids tend to not be real neat, okay, especially at younger ages, but it can be evident in, like in this picture, yeah, the room is messy, but it's kind of over the top. And the problem is it probably will get worse over time. It will get worse over time unless intervention is made. Psychological factors. Hoarding behavior may be an attempt to fill a void resulting from loss or an attempt to manage anxiety or distress. Again, oftentimes, and as a professional organizer, when I go in and talk to people, and we spend a lot of time just talking, it's not a matter of just going in the house and starting to pitch things. We talk and I learn more about their history. And it's very typical, okay, I lost my grandmother. I was very close to her. And right after that, I lost my father. Then I became divorced. And then I was diagnosed with precancerous cells. I mean, the things just started piling up. And that is often the result, resulting in some sort of accumulation or hoarding disorder. The person may be unaware of underlying causes and their effect on their behavior. PTSD can, I know, be a really tricky one. I've had people going through so many different issues that they ended up with post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's, I don't know if, fortunately, I've never had that. So I don't understand. I am not a psychologist. I have a big disclaimer that I am not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I don't profess to be, but I do listen well. So I think my psychological donation to the situation is that I listen. And because I listen, I can I'm much in a better position to try and help people. Okay, clutter in the brain. When I first saw, I'm old enough that I remember back in the day when there were magazines, and I think it was even on television, that there was a big campaign for anti-drug use. Okay, here's what your drug, your brain on drugs. And it showed a picture of, I can't remember if it was a hot sidewalk or a pan, and it had a fried egg sizzling. And so it said, here's a picture of your brain on drugs. So when I saw this, what does clutter do to your brain and body? It's like, this is what clutter does to your brain. Clutter has a cumulative effect on our brains, which like order. Okay. Studies show that from baby up to an older age, kids tend to like order. Okay, by their rooms, you might not be able to tell, but especially as a former teacher, kids like order in the classroom. They like regulation. They like knowing what's going to happen. When is it going to happen? What is it going to look like? What is my job to do? Okay, students typically like order. It can affect anxiety levels, sleep, and ability to focus. There's so much sleep research going on, and we all kind of, I think, just we're saturated with, you have to get enough sleep. if you don't get enough sleep, this, you're not going to function, you're not going to do this and that and the other thing. But hoarding is definitely something that people have a horrible time trying to get enough sleep. People become less productive. Okay. And I think that becomes from being overwhelmed. When you get up in the morning, and if you can even sleep on your bed, if there's room on your bed to sleep, you wake up and you see this massive mess. I mean, stacked up to the ceiling sometimes. And it's just like, you're overwhelmed. It's like, you're just going to try to find a place to sit down and just, try to put blinders on and not even see those things. It's not like you're going to wake up and jump out of bed and say, oh, today's the day I'm going to clean. People become less productive. And unless they get help turning that around, it's just going to continue and get worse. A specific part of the brain shows increased activity when people suffering from hoarding disorder try to make a decision on parting with items that belong to them. And here is why hoarding disorder ended up in the DSM. The orange section is more stimulated when people are trying to get rid of things that they don't want to get rid of. So hoarding disorder, stressful situations for someone with OCD, which hoarding disorder used to be part of OCD, exhibit higher activity in a different section. So the studies showed that hoarding disorder and OCD actually are stimulated in different parts of the brain. Social factors, and this is the heartbreaking part, really. Positive relationships can lower the severity of hoarding. Now, hoarders are, I'm not going to say, people with hoarding disorder will typically not let anyone in their home. Okay. People walk out of the home, they're clean, they're dressed, they go to work, they have jobs. Oftentimes people with hoarding disorder are very creative. It's like, what does a burglar look like? You and I. What does someone with hoarding disorder look like on the street? You and I. But once they get home and they walk through that door and they shut that door, it's a whole different world. Negative interactions in relationships can increase severity of hoarding. We're going to talk about this for a bit. The blame game. How can you live like this? Why don't you get rid of this stuff? The finger pointing starts. Major life events like a death in the family, divorce, or life transitions can worsen hoarding behavior. So unfortunately, with people that already have hoarding behavior, of course, bad things can keep happening in their life, and it just causes a spiral to go further down and down. Social isolation. Many hoarders would love to have people over, but they just can't. They're embarrassed. Embarrassment and the social stigma of hoarding can interfere in receiving treatment or asking for help. Now this, think back when it said that 5% of people in the United States have hoarding disorder. Well, because it's underreported, they don't allow anyone else in the home. So when you drive by the house, you can't say, oh, look, there's a hoarding situation. You can't tell oftentimes. Now, a lot of times the hoarding goes outside of the house as well, but people don't report themselves. They don't let you into the house. So it stands to reason, it's logical that 5% is low and that there really are more people than that with hoarding disorder. Asking for help can be very dangerous because as soon as they ask for help, well, they're going to have to let somebody into the house. And they know that if they do that, they may be kicked out and they may end up homeless. So, they're not going to self-report. We get into the issues of mandatory reporting, which is very difficult because it's, if they won't let you in the house, and of course you can't force your way in, how are you going to report the hoarding situation? So it's a very, very difficult issue. Statistics show that a forced clean out can actually make the situation worse. There are so many, people say, oh, hoarding disorder. Oh, is that like those shows on TV? Well, unfortunately, in a certain aspect, yes, but it's reality TV. It's staged. But yes, one thing that shows about hoarding have helped with is awareness, public awareness. And I give so many presentations that I'm hoping will help make other people aware of the hoarding disorder, and this, friends and family members, showing them where they can get help. The person is re-traumatized by the clean out and therefore may hoard worse than they did before the clean out. So this is an example of a situation where the hoarding situation grew continuously over a period of 6 years. The home was cleaned by the family while the owner was away. The hoarding behavior resumed in year 8 and surpassed by year 10 where they were before the home was cleaned out. The hoarding behavior resumed in year 8 and surpassed the first 6 years by a significant margin. And this is very common. Now, the danger zone is in this forced clean out stage. There have been issues of, total mental breakdowns and even suicide, because people often think that their stuff is who they are. That's their self-identity. Their stuff surrounds them like a cocoon. It keeps them safe. And when you unexpectedly take that away, there can be some very, very drastic results. So how to be supportive? There's do's and don'ts. Do not get defensive, shame, or blame the person who is hoarding. And that very often family, friends, or anybody else that manages to get a look at the inside of the home starts blaming. Okay, how could you do this? You're a terrible person. How do you live like this? And the list goes on. Obviously, this is not useful. Attempt to give therapy to the person hoarding if you are not a licensed therapist. Okay. Professional organizers belong to one of probably 2 different national organizations. And to belong, there is a list of ethics. And I am ethically bound to not say that I am a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that I do not try to psychoanalyze someone, because I'm not equipped for that. I'm not a licensed therapist, and I make that very clear from the onset. Do build and maintain trust at all times. Now, obviously, if someone removes something from the home of someone with hoarding disorder and either does it kind of sneakily on the sly or just says, you don't need this, and walk out the door with it, there is no trust there. I have to develop trust. When I go into a home with hoarding disorder, I have to not pretend. I have to make sure that I don't have any negative facial expressions. I don't say anything negative. The first thing I do, and sometimes it takes weeks, even months, to maintain a trust so that people will actually start expecting to become a little bit better. Listen carefully to the person's fears and concerns. Set aside your agenda. Okay, I cannot go into someone's home and start cleaning or start picking things up, and that is just not productive. I just listen. For weeks, I may just listen, and sometimes it's called talk therapy. We're going to get into treatments in just a bit. Have a conversation if you have concerns, not a judgmental or defensive argument. Okay. There is no space or time for argument, because obviously it's like working with young children. Sometimes if you push, they will push back even harder. And, typically you overstepped your bounds if they ask you to leave. That is the worst. So you just have to keep those conversations going. Create a goal together, or work towards a goal that the person hoarding has for themselves. Okay, the goal could be tiny, just tiny. It could be, how about if we set a goal that we're going to wash some of the dishes and put them away in the kitchen. Just baby steps, anything that you can do, and let the person that hoards create the goal. So you can start asking them, is there anything different that you would like to see in the house? Well, and they start thinking, I would like to find a particular chair that I like, but I don't know where it is. Okay. And then you let them set a goal and then help them work toward it. Seek therapy from a professional therapist. Families should take on the role of supporter and encourager. But, it's not like, oh, I'm going to read a book about how to help people with hoarding disorder, and then I'm going to psychoanalyze them. And no, families cannot do that. They have to have a professional licensed therapist. There's a book out called Buried in Treasures. It's by David Tolin. It's a self-help book for people with hoarding disorder. It's also a resource for family members. And it's an informative for professional organizers, mental health specialists, and social workers. But it is designed to be a workbook for a support group. That was the intent of the book when it was written back in 2014. I am a person that holds classes. They are hour and a half each week for 11 weeks. Each person that attends the class has the book, and it's only for people with hoarding disorder. And that's made very clear when the class begins. There is a beautiful senior center in Eau Claire. They've been kind enough to give me a classroom to use, and I volunteer to teach the course. And I've had very good success. It's a peer support group. Okay, so everyone in the room has the problem. Everyone in the room understands the problem. And after the first couple of weeks, we all trust each other. And people can start actually relating to someone and thinking, oh, I'm not the only one with this problem. And people start sharing. And it's just a wonderful thing. I love teaching the class. How is hoarding disorder treated? Psychotherapy, also called talk therapy, is the primary treatment. Cognitive behavioral therapy is the most common form of psychotherapy used to treat hoarding disorder. Treatment often involves routine assistance from family, friends, and agencies to help remove clutter. And this is so important because it goes back to the old saying, it takes a village, and it really, really does. Everyone in the family, the friends, the state, county, local city agencies, health groups, ADRCs, CCS, all have to get together. This is particularly the case for the elderly or those struggling with medical conditions that may make it difficult to maintain effort and motivation. And this is right out of the Mayo Clinic Health System webpage. I also work with CCS agencies and ADRCs across northwestern Wisconsin. I am a licensed provider for CCS. I work with clients that are referred to me that have evidence of hoarding disorder. So I work with government agencies. I also have private clients. Resources. There are many, many places to go online to get help and get more information about hoarding disorder. I belong to the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. They're a wonderful resource for hoarding disorder. They have for free if you go out to challengingdisorganization.org. And I highly recommend, if you don't ask for a set of the slides from this presentation, at least write down challengingdisorganization.org. They have a menu up at the top. It says resources. You drop down and they have lots of free resources to learn more about hoarding. They have a hoarding scale. In other words, it's like any other disorder. There are several levels. It's not black and white. Either you have hoarding disorder or you don't. There are many different levels of hoarding disorder. Safety inspection form. Every county has a health department, and there may be a referral where someone says, I really think somebody should, go into that home and do a safety inspection. Or maybe a family member talks the person with hoarding disorder into letting a safety inspection be done. General information on hoarding disorder and an image rating scale showing levels of hoarding. And we're going to take a look at a couple of those. So again, if you have a small screen, I'm just going to read some of this for you. ICD's Clutter-Hoarding Scale, there's categories. Okay, so structure and zoning, assessment of entrance, exits, electrical, is the plumbing working, that sort of thing. Okay. Animals and pests, is it an animal situation of animal hoarding? Is there evidence of rodents, insects, that sort of thing? Another category is household functions. Can rooms be used for the intended purposes? Can you take a shower in the bathroom? Can you sleep in the bed? If you want to sit down, is there a chair or something? Everything. The room should be able to be used. Can you cook in the kitchen? Health and safety, sanitation levels. There may be mold, mildew, any of that sort of thing. Personal protection equipment, people going in, and I also have to be very careful going in to protect myself from the environment. And then the scope of the scale. This document is to be used as an assessment tool only. Okay. This does not state, well, here's what should be done, or here's what has to be done. It's just a safety inspection. So what are levels of hoarding, and what does that mean? So this particular one has 5 levels. Level 1, household environment is considered standard. No special knowledge and working with the chronically disorganized is necessary. Okay, so the home needs help. It needs work. but it's, at a low level. Unfortunately, it usually escalates from here. This is how it might start. By level 2, the household environment requires professional organizers or related professionals who have additional knowledge and understanding of chronic disorganization. Okay. And so there's two different ways of looking at hoarding disorder. One is just chronic disorganization, and that's how it starts. But if we can catch it at level 1 and level 2, we can possibly prevent it from getting worse. Level 3, now we're starting to get into trouble. The pivot point between a cluttered household environment and a potential hoarding environment. Those working with level 3 household environments should have significant training in chronic disorganization. So now level 3, it can't we need to go beyond a friend or a family member. It needs to be someone that is actually trained to work in this sort of situation. Level 4, we're really getting into the danger zone. Household environment requires a coordinated, collaborative effort. Now here's the team approach. We have to have a team coming in. Professional organizers, family, mental health professionals, social workers, financial counselors, pest and animal control officers. Here we need to build that village. You really need help. We get into the red, and here's where they're in danger of being evicted. It's so unhealthy. One big safety issue is making sure that people have pathways through the house. I know a fire inspector in Eau Claire that said that oftentimes if there's a fire or someone falls or some sort of emergency, the people get there with like a gurney and they can't get through the house to get to the person. And hoarding disorder is also a huge factor in most fires, home fires. So level 4, this is where, mandatory reporters would definitely report the home to the necessary authorities, and they would have to come in and do an inspection. So what do these levels look like? Okay, so how bad does it need to be? Now, this breaks it down into 9 different sections. And again, if you have a smaller screen, this is hard to see. But section number 1, it's a bedroom. And there really isn't anything wrong with it. Now, number 2, okay, here we go. This could be just a matter of a lot of, it's messy. It's not hoarding, it's just messy. Level 3, we can see that things are starting to spiral up. Lots more stuff. By level 4, questionable whether or not that person would be able to sleep on the bed. There's tripping, things all over the floor, very dangerous. And then it just keeps getting worse. Level 5, level 6, now we're really getting into the danger zone. This bedroom cannot probably be really used as a bedroom, as you and I would use a bedroom. Level 7, it's just getting worse. Level 8, by level 9, it's almost to the ceiling. Things are piled up that high. This is not a bedroom anymore. This cannot be used as a bedroom. And this is a very high level of hoarding disorder. So what do they look like? Or what do they look at for uniform inspection checklists? And this is an example of checklist on that ICD website. If you go out, you can print this off. You can take a look at it. So the following items must be unobstructed, completely clear of any items. Okay. Egresses, windows, doors. Typically in a very high level situation, most of them, if not all of them, are blocked. Firemen, EMTs couldn't even get in there if they wanted to get to someone that's in distress. Pathways, a minimum of 36 inches wide, unobstructed and continuous pathways through the residence, which means down to the bare floor. Okay, not just a few things on it, but absolutely clear pathways through the house. Staircases, oftentimes stairs will be completely obstructive, if not mostly. No smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, sprinkler heads, all have to be smoke detectors for sure in the home. And oftentimes in a home with significant hoarding, there are no smoke detectors. So it goes on, internal doors must be unobstructive, windows, one window per room must be unobstructive. So in the night, if you're in the bedroom and there's a fire, there has to be one window that you could use to get out. Heat and electrical sources, this is a huge problem. And this is where the fire inspector said stoves, ovens, refrigerators, space heaters, he said, are huge. People will have space heaters, but there's so much stuff sitting around it. As soon as it gets to a certain temperature, fire will occur. Air conditioning units, heat thermostats must be unobstructed. Typically, I have seen stoves that not only have things piled on top of the stove, but the oven is full of things. Heat and electrical sources, they're typically in a hoarded situation. There will be extension cords. On top of extension cords, there will be clothing and newspapers piled. And emergency pull cords must be unobstructed. So if it does have an emergency cord, they have to be able to get to it. So this is an example of an inspection list. Other resources, there are many, many books out. And if you do think of looking at books, I highly recommend that you find ones that are very recently published, because fortunately, more and more research is being done on hoarding disorder. Healthcare facilities will have information, government agencies, and we had talked about the long list of wonderful agencies as far as cities, state, county health departments. So they are a wonderful resource for more resources. Research reports, there are many, many research places that are very, very active right now. More and more research is finding a lot of things that we didn't know before. So it's very important, especially if you're a professional therapist. I'm sure you already read research reports, and there are many, many out there on hoarding disorder. The websites, the Institute for Chronic Disorganization, and also NAPO is National Association of Productivity and Professional Organizers. And they also have lots and lots of information on hoarding disorder. Okay. And here again, if you have, if you want to just take a picture of this screen, then you'll have my business card. You'll have information on how to get a hold of me. Please contact me for questions, comments, and additional resources for your specific needs. I would be happy to talk to you, even if I'm very difficult to, I am fully booked as a professional organizer, so I can't always answer the phone. But if you do call, please be sure and leave me a message so that I can get back to you. Okay, so Mike, I think we're ready for maybe some questions and comments.
Right, Connie, we do have some comments already and some questions in the Q&A. Let me get to the questions right away.
Okay.
Do you have a suggestion on what to say that may be helpful or maybe helping to encourage someone when you're at someone's house who has a hoarding disorder and they say, don't mind the mess, or I'm going to do some cleaning tomorrow? How do you get someone to actually get off the dime and get to it?
Well, at that point, obviously we would all respond and just saying, how are you happy living like this? Or, something that just is not kind, or we just fall off and say, this, how can you live like this? Why don't, we kind of get into this. Just, how are you today? How are you feeling? You can't immediately react at all. If you do, they will completely shut down, shut you out, and you will not be invited back. So just get to know them a little bit, let them tell you, and then say, I'd love to come back and talk some more. Would that be okay? And then you might contact, with total privacy, a professional and say, I was in a home the other day that, where can I get some help for this person? And let the professionals handle it.
Right. Thanks, Becky, for that question. Really good. Vicki wants to ask, it said that it's mentioned that hoarding tendencies start in childhood. What are some of the tendencies you might notice if you're a mom looking to see, is my teenager going to be a hoarder one of these days? It says, also, how many people who have hoarding behaviors or suffered from past traumas? I mean, all of us have had traumas, but what would be something related to developing this hoarding disorder? I've watched hoarders on TV and all these episodes I've seen, Vicki says the person has had some type of past trauma. So what might be something that, were they short of newspapers when they were a kid? What is it that gets people to keep all of that paper?
Sure. Yeah, so there's a chapter in Buried in Treasures that says, how did I get this way? So, that's almost another whole presentation. But with young children, it's very hard to tell. Some children are neat. There are some children that actually do take care of their rooms. So at that point, some parenting skills need to come in, and watch the child. And sometimes it's just because the child doesn't have any idea, why does it have to be clean all the time? It's just going to get dirty again. But just to keep an eye on it and be very careful about children that take food into the bedroom and leave it just strewn all over. Empty pop cans, start looking for some squalor, and that's where you really need to nip it in the bud. And then again, get some professional help. My child has this, they're doing that. Do I need to intervene, and so forth and so on. And again, there could be some major trauma going on in the home. And as far as the trauma is definitely going to be present in someone with hoarding disorder. The more trauma, and typically it's trauma that it's like a perfect storm. There's a divorce, there's a death, there's an illness, and they all just kind of, and then that's the hoarding really starts to escalate.
Nancy, I think you've sort of addressed this, but she says, do you offer any virtual classes or support groups for individuals with the hoarding disorder? And I might ask, you're fully booked. Do you do trainings to try and develop, I hate to say develop the competition, but do you do trainings for those who want to become helpful in solving these hoarding problems?
Sure, yeah. I don't do the training, but that is something that I'm definitely looking into, because I am I don't know, I'm not going to say I'm the only professional organizer trained in this area, but for how many miles, I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm 90 miles east of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, and there's a lot of people in Minneapolis that do this. Yes, I also offer the class online. Again, please get back to me, let me know. I can let you know when the next class is starting. And I could even do classes, within, say, 60 or 70 miles of Eau Claire.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. And Fran asks, I would think it's a challenge to lead someone with hoarding disorder that they could benefit from professional assistance. Are there suggestions you could share that have been effective for you or perhaps for people you know?
Okay. So suggestions as to how I actually help people with hoarding disorder. I'm going to assume that's kind of where it's going. I have had numerous courses. It takes training. It really takes training. And the only thing I'm really allowed to do, you know, and I'm not a therapist, but motivational interviewing is huge. And those of you that are professionals, you know about motivational interviewing and just talk therapy. A lot of it is just talking. And developing that trust is step one, and it can take weeks. But then slowly, the people start coming out saying, you know, I don't really like living like this. Oh, tell me more about that. And so you get the people to try to help themselves. But then also, the Institute organization is specifically for therapists and professional organizers working together. That's their whole mission. And I always ask, I try to make sure that my hoarding clients are receiving some sort of professional therapy.
Yeah, good question. Let me see, we're getting toward the, okay, it is noon, I guess.
Mhm.
Connie, this has been a fantastic, any other questions? Anything else? Anyone? Not yet, it seems. Okay, so
Yeah.
Connie, thank you for giving us these 2 hours of your expertise.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. Oh, I see one more. Someone's popped up here.
Okay.
Don't want to skip it. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, yeah,
Sure.
really a fantastic. And remember, everyone, if you want to get in touch with Connie, she's got these presentations for you, and I'm sure she'd be glad to help consult with whatever situations you have. She'll get you
Absolutely.
moving.
Email is great. Please email me if you have any other questions.
Terrific. Okay, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week. A couple of more fantastic presentations are scheduled. Thank you for joining, and Connie,
Thank
take
you,
care.
Mike.
Thanks again.